So the reaction's actually been running for about an hour now. That's really the maximum time that the reaction is supposed to run. So I'm going to go ahead and take the round bottom flask off the stirrer and remove the stir bar. My stir bar remover. And then I'll pour both layers into a separatory funnel. Make sure that the stopcock is closed when you do this. And next I need to rinse the round bottom flask with a little bit of ethyl acetate. That's the solvent that we used. And so I'll pour about 5 milliliters of ethyl acetate into the round bottom flask to make sure that any product that was in the round bottom flask goes into the separatory funnel. Okay, so next we need to add 20 milliliters of saturated sodium chloride solution. This is a little bit more, that's okay. This is 25 milliliters of saturated sodium chloride solution. That saturated sodium chloride solution, it helps the layers to separate because it makes the water layer more dense. So you see here in the round bottom flask, there are definitely 2 layers. I'm going to shake it to let the layers mix really well. So notice you have the stopper in the separatory funnel. Shake to let the layers mix. Vent the separatory funnel too. Shake. So shaking makes all of the layers contact each other so that the product, the methoxybenzaldehyde, which is not very polar, it will go into the ethyl acetate layer. And so you see that the layers start to separate as the mixture settles. The ethyl acetate layer goes to the top, the water layer goes to the bottom, and 2 layers form. Okay, so I'll let that set for a moment, and next I'm going to drain the lower layer into a 100 milliliter beaker, and I labeled it aqueous. I don't know if you can see, I wrote it with a grease pencil, aqueous, for the aqueous layer. And so take the stopper off, and then I'm going to turn the stopcock to let the lower layer drain into the aqueous beaker. Okay, it's almost there. Okay, so I have the lower layer drained into the aqueous beaker, and I'm going to put the upper layer into an Erlenmeyer flask. So here's the upper layer. So the ethyl acetate is in the Erlenmeyer flask. Okay. So now I'm going to pour the aqueous layer back into the separatory funnel Again, I have the stopcock horizontal so that when I pour this back in, it doesn't drain onto the table. So what we're going to do next, this is the aqueous layer, is add more ethyl acetate to the aqueous layer. Ethyl acetate, if there is some product dissolved in the aqueous layer, the ethyl acetate will remove it from the aqueous layer, bring it to the ethyl acetate layer. And so I'll put about 10 milliliters of ethyl acetate in the aqueous layer here. Ethyl acetate and water don't really mix. So you can see a small layer of ethyl acetate on the top. So now I capped the separatory funnel again and shake. Shaking it will allow the ethyl acetate to contact any organics that are mixed with the water, and the ethyl acetate will dissolve the organics that are mixed with the water. So again, when I let it set, ethyl acetate rises to the top. Let that set for a minute. And looks like that separated pretty nicely. Again, I'll drain the aqueous layer into the beaker. So watch the layer as it comes down to stop when the ethyl acetate gets to the bottom. There. Okay, so now I have the aqueous layer in the beaker. Ethyl acetate, which I extracted the aqueous layer with, the ethyl acetate is now still in the separatory funnel. So I'm going to put this ethyl acetate with the other ethyl acetate layer in the Erlenmeyer flask. Put my aqueous layer back to the side. Okay, so next I'm going to take my ethyl acetate layer back into the separatory funnel and extract the ethyl acetate with about 20 milliliters of deionized water. So I'll pour so right now you see ethyl acetate. It's got a little emulsion at the bottom. That's okay. Hopefully the water will take care of that. So I poured the water into the ethyl acetate layer, stopper it, and now again, you see it formed two separate layers. The water layer is on the bottom. And so again, I'll shake this. To let the layers come in good contact. And you can see the layers start to separate as it sets. Remember, the lower layer is the aqueous layer, the upper layer is the organic layer. Oh yeah, there it's separating nicely. That emulsion went away and I've got a clean dividing line between the organic layer on the top and the aqueous layer on the bottom. So I'll let that set for another few seconds. And I'll again drain the aqueous layer with my other aqueous layers into the beaker. My product is dissolved in the ethyl acetate layer. Okay. One thing I forgot to do was extract with sodium hydroxide. That was in the directions, but I just didn't do that. The sodium hydroxide is necessary because if any of the aldehyde got oxidized, it would turn into a carboxylic acid, and we need to get rid of that carboxylic acid because we want pure aldehyde as the product. So I'll add 20 milliliters of sodium hydroxide. Sodium hydroxide, this is aqueous, it's aqueous sodium hydroxide. There you see my two layers. So the layers are starting to separate. And now I can drain the aqueous layer into the beaker. That, and finally extract one more time with water. So I have my two layers. And let the layers separate. Got in a hurry. Don't get in a hurry. Let the layers separate. Let the layers separate. They're still not quite separated. I've got a little emulsion formed here, so I'm going to let it set for a couple minutes, see if that settles.